everyone, and welcome back to Identity Insights by Indicio. I'm your host, Tim Spring, and today I'm joined by Indicio's VP of Business Development, James Schulte, and Senior Software Engineer, Colton Wolkins. And that we are here today to discuss what makes a verifiable credential and go into some of the details around this piece of technology for you. I really appreciate both of you taking the time to speak with me today. If I could, I'd like to start with a baseline kind of description of what we mean when we say verifiable credential. So could one of you please describe just kind of in your own words what that term means for us?
Yeah, I'd be happy to go first on this. So, a verifiable credential typically, refers to the W3C standard, so the standard from the World Wide Web Consortium, which that defines a certain data model for a digital credential that uses a specific structure and cryptographic framework. So it's a yeah, like I said, a very specific type of digital credential that has specific properties that differentiate it from other types of digital certificates or digital credential types. So it involves certain types of signatures, certain ways of verifying, certain ways of packaging it, certain ways of issuing it. Um, yeah, I'd say, yeah. Anything you'd want to add to that, Colton?
You've nailed a lot of the stuff on the head. I just basically like to add on that one of the big things that makes verifiable credentials verifiable is the addition of those cryptographic signatures on the credentials themselves.
James, I know you talk to customers all the time and talking about different credential types and what they're trying to do for their different systems for identities. Uh, have they, when you talk to them, are they typically looking for the W3C variety of verifiable credentials? Is it a new concept to them? Have they heard of it? Just where are customers at on these specific types of credentials?
Yeah, I would say over the last 2-3 years, the understanding around verifiable credentials has rapidly increased because of initiatives like the European Union Digital Identity Wallet and the European Union framework that involves verifiable credentials as well as other credential types like the ISO MDL or the 18013 5 standard for mobile driver's licenses. So I would say that there's more of an understanding. I have heard the term verifiable credential used loosely in different contexts, so sometimes there is confusion around what exactly a verifiable credential is. There have been cases where they assume that any sort of digital certificate or even something as simple as a signed PDF or a barcode-based credential is considered a verifiable credential with uppercase verifiable credential when in fact those might not actually follow the W3C data model or support those specific privacy preserving mechanisms or enable decentralized verification. So when I talk with potential customers and partners or organizations that are exploring it, I make sure to parse out what their understanding is of verifiable credentials, what context they're using it in, and seeing if seeing what types they're currently using, or if there's if they're looking to upgrade to a true verifiable credential that follows that W3C standard.
All right.
And I think part of that it might be due to the word verifiable there, just being a general word rather than like a specific word like MDL, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a generic adjective, and so sometimes, yeah, you have to be careful to clarify what exactly is meant by that. And I found as well, speaking with organizations in other parts of the world where English is a second or third language, it doesn't necessarily translate well. The word verifiable. So using it in the proper context and it helps showing the documentation and the links that explain it is something that's useful.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you do run into those customers, right, that you mentioned, they just think they're using verifiable credentials and it might not be that capital V, like you mentioned. What does that conversation look like where you actually, explore, okay, well, what is your credential doing and how does it function? How do you really get to the meat of if they want slash need the capital V verifiable credentials?
Mhm. Yeah, so first I try to get an idea of their current use case or what challenge they're trying to solve. Because there are some cases where a verifiable credential might not make sense. There are cases where an internal token or some other form of identifier could make sense. But in use cases where they are looking for privacy preservation, if they're looking for something that is tamper evident, if they're looking for something that is portable across different contexts and systems, or something that needs to allow for third parties to be able to verify it without needing to necessarily have a direct integration back to the issuer, then those are cases where it would make more sense to have a verifiable credential with a capital V in that sense. One thing that we've seen as well is there are cases where even if it is a closed loop or centralized ecosystem, like let's say an employer issuing credentials to their own employees, a verifiable credential can be a very effective way to do that, if not more so, because of those extra capabilities that the model brings, as opposed to things like a signed PDF or a simple digital certificate.
So Colton, I know that obviously you deal with a bit more technical side at Indicio. Could you go into a bit more about what makes a verifiable credential in terms of all the aspects of how it functions and what benefits to the obviously what James kind of laid out there in terms of temper evident and all that things, uh, how that works on the technical side? Could you go into that for us a little bit?
So I'd first like to go ahead and start. One of the big things that makes verifiable credentials is the fact that there is a standard being followed. Like has been previously mentioned, we've talked about, signing of PDFs and whatnot, which there isn't. I mean, it's good to sign your PDFs, but at the same time, there's not a standard way to double check that those signatures are valid. I might open it up on a PDF reader on my phone, and it doesn't even tell me that, this has been signed and hasn't been tampered with or anything like that. And so the big thing right off the bat, you have to follow these standards, the W3C verifiable credential standards. Another thing on top of that, so past the following the standards, making the credentials more portable, is the fact that you need a way to verify. And for that, you need a set of encryption keys and signing keys to sign the credential itself and encrypt the data in transit so that, when the data is going from point A to point B, no one can just take that credential in between. But also, that it was issued by, say, the DMV or the airport or wherever the credential came from. And that's where the keys come into play. That's why they're an important part. But on top of that, not only does the issuer have to have these keys to sign the credential, but the device itself needs to be able to have keys so that that it came from the device that it was issued to, and that it wasn't, transferred or siphoned away by somebody else who is trying to pretend to be whoever it is.
All right. So yeah, it thwarts kind of impersonation attacks or made-in-the-middle attacks that way. Is that kind of correct? If I could summarize real quick.
That's exactly where I was going, yeah.
All right. Perfect. So you touched on it a little bit, but obviously that these features are, implying those benefits to the customer. There's a lot of different ways that people can kind of approach implementing those kinds of features. I'm curious, James, if you could talk a bit about why customers choose verifiable credentials for us.
Mhm. I would say there are a couple different forces that are moving people in the direction of using verifiable credentials. One, regulation, for example, like Europe implementing the EIDAS 2.0 regulatory framework for digital identity. And that framework calls for the use of verifiable claims, so verifiable credentials. I would say another force is speed. Customers are looking for a way to protect the privacy of their users, to comply with identity or with data privacy laws, and they need to do it in a way that is quick, that doesn't add more friction. And they see verifiable credentials as a way to bring that element of speed while checking off the boxes that they need to. Also, putting putting more control in the hands of the end users is becoming a competitive edge. Also from a regulatory standpoint, where they're pushing more of that control into the user's hands to decide where they share their data and with whom they share it. But it really does depend on the use case. Each use case has its own requirements and things that they're looking to benefit from. But overall, from what I've seen and talking with organizations that are implementing these things, is speed is the number one aspect that they're interested in.
Absolutely. I can definitely see that, especially from the removing friction point of view, right? There's multi-factor authentication is now on everything. God, it's so annoying having to find my phone or open my email, whatever, to get that special code to get in. So yeah, doing it in one tap would be way better. So I know that there's not like just one kind of verifiable credential out there, right? There's a ton of different types that I've heard about. And Colton, I was wondering if you could run us through kind of some of the types that you work with and that Indicio uses, and why you might want to use, this credential type versus that credential type.
Right, and like you mentioned, we go ahead and use a bunch of different formats. While I work with some of them, I don't work with all of the ones that we deal with. Some of the ones that we deal with are, or have been looking into, are MDoc slash MDL, SD JOTs, JOTs, anon creds, and a lot of these. Each of these technologies has their own pros and cons as to why you'd use them. I know that recently there's a notice, like a warning going out right now talking about MDLs, where inside of the specification they have the ability to phone home, which is what most government entities, what most customers don't want. They don't want it so that when they go to the store, like liquor store, they don't want the government knowing, oh hey, user went to the liquor store. But that's an optional feature, but people are working to turn that off in systems. Um, so I also mentioned like JOT and SD JOT. The difference between the two: SD JOT stands for selective disclosure JOT, which means that in the case of JOT versus SD JOT, I go ahead and present my credential, like say my driver's license as a JOT, and it presents all of the information on my driver's license, not just like my age or date of birth for which is needed for that liquor store example. But if I use an SD JOT, then I have the ability to choose what data is being sent. I'm not limited to just sending over all of my personal information over to whoever is asking for it. And so there's a lot of these nitty-gritty intricacies, a lot of different features between the different standards. And so picking which one to use is really a case-by-case basis, and it depends on your company needs.
Yeah, I'd just like to add to that, like Colton said, depending on the use case, depending on the requirements, the regulation, some credential types work better than others. Selective disclosure in cases where, holding back some information that isn't necessarily required for that, presentation of a credential is excellent. In a lower assurance use case where you're just giving like a first name last name, something like an JSON LD credential or a JOT or JWT credential could be ideal for that. So it really just depends on what level of assurance, what's the context, what ecosystems are you looking to interoperate with. So for example, the EU, the Architectural Reference Framework, has called for the SD JOT or SD JWT, as well as the MDoc MDL credential types. So governments, organizations that are looking to be able to interoperate with that ecosystem would need to follow those interop profiles to do so. So yeah, there's a lot of different flavors. It's pick your own adventure type of thing.
All right, so I know, right, a lot of these are essentially proving your identity in various contexts or other. Uh, and Indicio recently introduced Proven Auth to the market, which allows you to use a verifiable credential for single sign-on type applications, right, across, I think, 10 different use cases. So, I was wondering if you could run us through kind of whatever you want to use that for. I was wondering if either of you might be able to tell me a little bit about how that works in the context of our other identity providers, like, Auth0 or something along those lines. How do verifiable credentials really fit into that picture for our customers or from a technical perspective?
I can go ahead and start. So the nice thing about Proven Auth, which, as you mentioned, is our authentication solution that we've got that uses verifiable credentials, is it really marries those two types of systems, traditional identity access management systems, with now with the benefit of verifiable credentials. So Proven Auth can be integrated into a system like Auth0 or like a Ping or Okta or any sort of large IDP type of system that's based on those mainstream standards and protocols like OAuth or SAML, for example. Yeah, Proven Auth makes it easy to use verifiable credentials into those systems. So not necessarily needing to rely on an identity provided by the centralized identity provider, you can now have issued verifiable credentials as a way to authenticate into those systems. Obviously, only if the verifier accepts those credentials, of course. But it's a way to benefit from the aspects of verifiable credentials, like the decentralization, the privacy preservation, and the portability. Now with those traditional types of systems.
All right, very cool.
Kind of building off of what James said, one of the things that makes Proven Auth really nice is the fact that you can, a lot of companies, a lot of corporations use a form of single identity management system where you enter in your users into one database, and then all across all the different pieces of software, you can log in with your work credentials. And Proven Auth is able to, fit in the place of one of those systems, almost plug and play, basically. A lot of IT people will know how to get things integrated with the current setup that they've got, but also we're used to, for example, signing into Google. You sign into Google and it first asks you for your email. You press OK, and then it might ask you for your password. You press OK, then it sends a notification to your mobile device where you have to pull it out, look for the code or whatever. And one of the nice things about Proven Auth is it can just fit right into that flow. In some cases, depending on how you have your system configured, you could do away with the password entirely because you already know that they have a mobile device. It's already locked behind a PIN or facial ID, biometrics. And that biometrics is known to be better than a password. And so when you go to log into like the company blog, company website, you enter in your account name, I believe, and then you get a notification on your phone. They just basically say, "Yeah, I am me," and log in.
All right, yeah, definitely adding that even simpler single sign-on experience is definitely what the people are looking for. It looks like we are coming to about the end of our time, guys. Really appreciate again you both joining us. Before we do go, I'm curious if you have any final thoughts on verifiable credentials. Maybe as we're starting to see a bit more widespread adoption, how it might impact the average user, or how you've seen the technology growing, Colton, and you're working with verifiable credentials across open source groups or anything like that.
Yeah, I would just say that the technology is already here and it's already being implemented, and we're seeing it adopted by governments, by states here in the U.S. Enterprises are using it for internal use cases as well as with their end users and customers. So this isn't something that's theoretical down the road, might be coming. It's already here today. Organizations have it in production and it's live. So it's not a matter of if or when. It's a matter of what is your company's strategy on in implementing it and being able to consume these credentials and benefit from them, quickly onboarding customers, quickly performing things like KYC, quickly checking off the compliance checklist. So I would just recommend reaching out if you have any questions. If you're currently putting together your roadmap or your strategy on how to use or benefit this technology, feel free to reach out and we'd be happy to chat.
And as far as the open source work that I've been seeing around this and where things are going, there's lots of buzz on the AI stuff, implementing AI workflows into business practices and companies. AI companies are looking to implement things like verifiable credentials. Uh, Not only AI companies, but you've also got Internet of Things. So everyone has like, um, or not everyone, but a lot of people have like Google or Alexa devices in their home, maybe even Siri, right? You have these smart home devices, and devices like those, or even in the industrial space, are starting to implement some form of um, either the communication mechanisms that power verifiable credentials or verifiable credentials themselves on top of it. And so a lot of that's going on today. And as James said, it's not a matter of if and when, it's a matter of, do you want to start now and be ahead of the curve? Or do you want to be caught with your pants down as all of the products you interact with have like all of the other software solutions you're interacting with are using verifiable credentials, but you're the one who's not.
Well said, Colton. Well, that does bring us to the end of our time here. Really appreciate both of you again for taking the time to speak with us today. If you at home are interested in learning a bit more about decentralized identity technology and verifiable credentials, please be sure to subscribe to the channel. We'll continue to bring you some more educational content around those topics. And if you have any questions or specific topics that you'd like for us to cover, go ahead and leave a comment below and we'll be sure to readdress them. Thank you all for watching.